Where do people in the Middle Tennessee area vacation? The answer is the 30A Destin, Panama City area. And in today's video, I am talking with one of my real estate best friends who works in Destin about what you need to know about the 30A Destin community and real estate. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Caitlin Martin and I am a local Nashville real estate agent and founder of the Caitlin Martin team, powered by 𝐋𝐈𝐊𝐄 Realtors, the Andrews Group. I specialize in working with savvy sellers who want to sell right and sell smart, as well as working with out-of-staters looking to relocate to the Middle Tennessee area. Now, if this is your first time stopping by my channel, thank you so much. Please feel free to click subscribe down below so that you are notified anytime I release new video content. In today's video, I am continuing my conversation from my last video with my real estate best friend, Candice Powell, who lives and works in the Destin, Florida community. So in this video, we're going to be talking about what kind of criteria she needs from investors to start that home search. What are some of the pitfalls and things that you need to be aware of? Why, especially purchasing in the Florida Panhandle, why it's really important to have a local lender. Plus, we're also diving into what it's like to live there as a local and what some of her favorite places are. So again, without further ado, let's finish the conversation with Candice Powell.
So when you're looking at things overall, when you're first starting to talk to somebody that's interested in investing in the area, you know, how do you start that conversation in terms of what do you need in order to start that process of trying to find them, you know, because again, you said there's some that just want the cash flow. There's others that are like, I want it for my family and for cash flow opportunities. So what are those pertinent pieces of information that you need to really get things started?
Yeah, so I usually ask them, you know, are they wanting to be close to the beach, having a Gulf view? Are you just strictly investment? You're not worried about your family coming to visit? How many bedrooms, you know, any kind of amenities that they think. Usually they get a little direction, you know, does it have to have a pool? Does it have to, you know, have certain features of the property in order for it to be a good investment property? So we just have those conversations. And then what happens is that we start looking at properties, and then so I basically set up an overall view so that they can get used to the market and what's out there, what price points, what you can get for what, you know, depending on what they're needing. And then I will actually go through and hand select properties to send over to them, like, hey, this is usually a good area for cash flow. And so they'll take a look at them. And then what we do is that I'll look into it and see if there's any rental history. If there's not any rental history in that particular unit, I can get rental history of the building, for instance, if it's condos, or I can get some rental history of the subdivision. Mm-hmm. And then not only that we can bring also rental projections in. So when we get across that, then we'll start looking about the money coming out as well as the money coming in to see what the cash flow is, and then we go through that process.
Awesome. And so with that, I know that you briefly have mentioned the bay side versus the beach side. Do you notice any difference in whether it's like purchase price if a home is, say, maybe facing the bay versus facing the beach? Because at the end of the day, it's still water. So do you see any differences in either side, being on either side there?
I would say probably the better, at least in the Destin area, the south of 98 is better on returns on investment. It doesn't mean that we haven't found any north of 98, because there is some areas like in Destin, familiar with the Baytown Wharf area. There's like a little village there of shops and restaurants. And great amenities, and some of those areas have good return on investments as well, but you also have to look at there's multiple HOAs in that area as well. So like I said, it's just really property dependent on what an investor's wants and needs are, but then also what the property's potential to bring in.
So with that, if someone's looking to purchase, is there a better time of year to start looking and maybe purchasing? Just, if they're, because we've talked about being in season versus out of season. Is there a better time to purchase, or is it just when the right property comes available, that's the best time to jump on it?
Yeah, it really depends. So if we're looking at during season in the springtime, that's where the market starts getting a little crazy because a lot of buyers are looking. There's a lot of listings going up. But the thing is, you're about to get into busy season. So if there's a lot of renovations that need to be done, there's a lot of, I guess you can say, restrictions on doing renovations until the off season. Now, where you're going to get the most cash flow is during the prime season that we talked about before, which is Memorial Day to Labor Day. So let's say if you were to start in the winter time, you would still have time to do renovations and things like that if that's what you're wanting to do, but you're not going to be getting in that cash flow as much until you hit the summertime and the prime season. So when we look at cash flow, we look at the entire year since it's seasonal.
Awesome. Well, I mean, and that makes sense, because even for us, like with our Gatlinburg property, when we got in, it ended up being a blessing just because there were renovations that needed to happen. So we were able to do that in the low season to be able to then get to market there pretty quickly as it was heading into a more popular season, which is nice. So I can totally understand. But it's like maybe if somebody was looking for immediate cash flow, maybe closer to high season potentially, right?
Yeah, so a lot of people, they start looking in about January, February sometime, and you still might have a little time to do some tweaks here and there, to the property, and then you're going to start getting into spring break and then the start of the season. Now, like I said, there might be a little bit more inventory because all the listings are going up, but also more buyers, so you're going to have probably more competition. But in the off season, it's also good because you're going to have less competition, but there may not be as many listings going up. So it really just depends on about, what the market is doing at the time, what your goals are. If you're trying to find a turnkey condo where you don't have to do anything, or, if you are finding something that you want to do some renovations to.
So I know you've explained to me before, but something that we don't really have here in the Nashville area is like non-warrantable condos. So if somebody is looking for an income property, an investment property that's a condo, can you speak a little bit more to, that piece of what it is?
Yeah, so a lot of the condos here, and I would say the majority, just consider it always a non-warrantable condo. And the only thing that means, really, when it comes down to it, is that you have to have a portfolio loan. And so a lot of the lenders that are out of state have a very hard time closing on some of these condos. I'm not saying that they can't, but they do have a difficult time. So it's very good and highly recommended to use local lenders in our area that know the process and know the condos in this area and that have closed on them, because we have been in some transactions where the buyers do prefer their own bank or whatever that's out of state, and then we get to the point where we're almost to closing time and then we find out they can't close even though they said they could. So I just don't want anyone to ever get in that position, and so it's always good just to go with local lenders here as well. And then really when it comes to competition, and if there's any kind of multiple offers, the seller usually likes and prefers to have a local lender here because they know as well that they know this area and can close on them.
Absolutely. I mean, I always tell buyers when they're shopping here in the Middle Tennessee area, local lenders are preferred, especially when our market was white hot a couple of years ago and we were seeing insane offers, multiple offers. We saw list agents and sellers really lean heavily towards those that had local lenders. We have seen it now where it's not as bad because some of those big box lenders, because the market's not, the way it was, they can close on time. But I mean, I absolutely am right there with you in terms of just like getting that local lender because, they know that product in that area. They know the real estate there. And so, they know what's needed in order to, make the transaction happen and get that clear to close.
Absolutely. And that's the key, is getting to the closing table.
Yeah, because you don't want to go all the way through. If you're really excited about a property, you don't want to go all the way through. And then sure, you could maybe try to get an extension potentially and switch lenders, but that's rolling the dice sometimes.
Sure. And it's really bad, obviously on both parties, both the seller and the buyer, because they're both losing money, with everything that they have gone through the process for buyers, but then also sellers taking it off of the market. So, it's just best to go with a local lender for sure.
And then the other thing that I was going to talk about was, with condos, I know that like when we've looked at some of the real estate there in that area is the potential or the pending assessments. And so if somebody is maybe not familiar with a condo purchase, talk a little bit about the potential of having an assessment kind of hanging out there.
Sure. So a lot of the condos here obviously have your normal HOA, but then there might be some special assessments come up. So special assessments is basically, if they need to do some kind of construction, maybe they're redoing the elevators or maybe the stucco or the roof, all these different things that you would actually have to pay for when you have your own, like, let's say single family residence. You have the sometimes you got to paint, sometimes you got to replace your roof, sometimes you have to have certain electrical changes in the area. So basically those special assessments are going to cover for those. So every once in a while you will get those. When you do go under contract, that is something that will be disclosed if there's any kind of assessments coming up.
Does the contract stipulate, like, because I know here in the Middle Tennessee area, typically if there is, say, an assessment of some sort, I actually had this issue come up, I think it's been this year, but time is flying. We had it come up where there actually was a pending assessment, but our contracts say that if there's one that's pending at the time of closing, the seller pays for that out of their proceeds. And then anything in the future obviously would fall on buyers. Do your contract stipulate anything like that at all?
Yes. And when you write up the contract, when making the offer, you can choose different options. So obviously anything that is pending or of installments, you can have the seller pay, or if there's any like installments or anything like that, but before closing the seller can pay, and then after closing the buyer can pay. It just really depends on what you put on the contract and what negotiations you can do with the seller.
Awesome. I mean, I know, with real estate, I can know how things go here, but you never know how things can vary state to state. So,
yes, everything's different.
I feel like it's always really good, though, to know if someone's interested in real estate down there, just a couple of things to kind of be aware of what they could run into, prior to running into it, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely. And I know with that building that collapsed in South Florida, that they are now actually requiring later on here in the future for all condos a reserve study. And that is going to be fantastic to knowing when things are going to be replaced on these condos. And it's basically going to show how much they have in the reserves, when things are going to have to be replaced in the future, and if they have enough. So it obviously it's a little bit more detailed than that. So that's definitely going to help in the future when that comes around. But right now, basically, I just tell, everyone that we'll find out if there's anything pending. And then when we go into a condo, just start taking a look visually, like, hey, what needs to be updated on this property? More than likely, there's probably going to be assessments that come up eventually to update this property.
Absolutely. And so, one thing that I know that you've encouraged me about is self-managing. So if people, because I know it's really easy to be like, I'll get an investment property, maybe it's their first one, whatever it may be, and just be like, oh, I'll just give it to a rental company. Well, those rental companies that handle that can end up taking a nice chunk of your proceeds, your return on investment. So, when you're having that conversation with somebody, and even if they're brand new to the investment space, what are you kind of telling them on self-manage versus handing it to a rental company?
Sure. Yeah. So the only thing is, when it comes to property management companies, is that they take a huge chunk of your income. So in this area, common is about 20%, but we're looking at about 20 to 30% depending on the rental property manager. And then also when it comes to self-management, that it only takes a few hours to actually set up in the beginning after the initial setup. And then it takes a few hours a week to actually manage the property. Now, what we can do as a team, we can refer you to certain vendors. So, we have cleaners, we have handymen, things like that, where you can have that that setup. And a lot of people are a little nervous being out of state, but people do this all the time. They just build their own team. And then they also have connections here with other investors and who they use. There's multiple sites that you can get on, ask, who their favorite cleaner is, who their favorite handyman is, things in that nature. So we do help them, get set up if they do want to self-manage. Now, obviously it's a process in the beginning.
It's a learning curve.
And it might be, it's a process, but we do have resources, that we can direct them to get educated on it. And if that's something they want to do. Now, obviously there's some circumstances and some investors like, absolutely not. I do not want to self-manage. I don't want to have to take care of that. So there's some great, property managers in this area that we can refer them to. But it just seems like most of the time when we do have our clients, take over self-management that has been once managed by property managers, the income does go up on that.
I can totally understand that. And then with the short-term rentals, have you ever run into a situation where, because I know that with Airbnb specifically, if a property's on there and then the property gets sold to somebody else, I believe that current bookings that would fall under the new owner, sometimes those can go away and you have to kind of start back. Sometimes, at least the way here in Nashville that we found the workaround is purchasing the property LLC, and so it all can transfer over. Have you dealt with any of that at all before, or have had to troubleshoot anything in terms of, moving a property from one owner to the next at all when it comes to short-term rentals?
So it depends. So when it comes to,
Hang on.
what was that?
Google Voice. I don't know who it is. Shh. I have to find every tab that Google Voice is open in. Okay. All right. So have you had any issues of having a property transfer and any bookings transfer? Have you run into that at all?
So it depends. It depends on what kind of agreement the seller has, for instance, let's say with a property manager.
Okay.
So sometimes the property manager requires that all bookings are kept for a certain period of time.
Okay.
And then sometimes they don't. It just depends on what kind of agreement that they have. Now, if the property manager has other properties that they can move those vacationers to, or those guests, then it's easier for them just to move them to a different one. If they don't, then obviously, canceling those guests would not be a good thing. But during that time, the new owner obviously will get the income.
Okay.
I
always feel like that's really good to know. Again, my perspective is, if somebody's maybe looking into this for the first time, and again, they may have investment properties elsewhere, but if they haven't looked at this area before, just kind of what you guys run into, what kind of things can be happening. But overall, I know that Florida, in addition to Tennessee, has been a really popular destination for people. I know that, you've mentioned how Destin is more reliant on the tourism versus locals, but just in general, how has your market been going this year?
Yeah, it's been going good. I think just about where everyone else is. Homes, condos are staying on the market longer, obviously because of the higher interest rates, but people are still finding, there's some good investment properties here still with the higher interest rates and the higher price points to where you can have passive income and have a good cash flow. So there's still investment properties out there. Inventory though is still low.
Yep.
So yeah, and I think that's just about like everywhere.
So you're not sometimes seeing like with the inventory still being low, you're not seeing this like massive like tanking. It's just you still have low inventory, but things are, I guess, a little bit slower than, and again, that's a trend that we've seen in Nashville, but it sounds like that's kind of similar to what y'all have been seeing.
Yeah, no, there hasn't been some like major tank. It's like pretty steady at the moment when it comes to that. But when we're talking about also, I think I looked in the other day helping a seller out and looking at the absorption rate. So I don't know, who's familiar with the absorption rate, but it's basically all of the everything that's for sale in that market and how long it would take for them to be sold without anything added. And I think we're looking around 4 months right now, and most people think that the market has shown once when we get up to 6 months, then it turns over to, a buyer's market. So we are looking about 4 months right now. So it's steadily, going up.
Are you seeing seller concessions or like massive price drops on homes at all? I mean, granted, to me, when you're looking at again, I've watched Luke Bryan's property. I mean, it's come down a couple mil since it hit the market, but let's take the major luxury market out of the consideration here. So anything like up to $1 million or $1.5 million, are you guys seeing massive price drops in those, or what are you seeing?
So basically we have a statistic here where sales to list price is about 95%. Yeah. Now anything over a certain amount of days on the market, I want to say just off the top of my head, it's either, I want to say it's over 60, that percentage goes down from sales to list price. But, it just really depends on how many days on the market, that it's been. So, but pretty much the list price, we don't have huge offers way below that, get accepted. Every once in a while we will. Right. There's just so many determining factors when it comes to that.
I mean,
But we definitely are seeing days on the market longer, which also we have found since the interest rates are going up, sellers are more willing to help with repairs, to help with, you know, concessions and things like that.
well, and that's the thing, even here, because, you know, I know that news headlines and the media can scare people in terms of what's happening. But even here, at least in the Franklin, Williamson County area, still like the percentage of sales price to list price is like 97.8, which is on the low end. So, I mean, it's still not exceedingly low offers. But, you know, we are starting to see some seller concessions happening and some price reductions. But I mean, we're not taking massive hits going in the opposite direction, you know?
Sure. And the thing is, the market always adjusts one way or another. So the fact that the interest rates are going up, you know, and maybe the price point for buyers, they're not able to get as high as they once were. But now, you know, sellers, you know, there's seller concessions there and they're helping with repairs. So no matter what, the market always adjusts and there's, you know, always a time to buy when it comes down to it.
All right. So Candice, you have been living in this Destin community for a good number of years now, right?
Yeah, I've lived here for about 7 years now. And the reason why I moved here is because it was my favorite vacation spot. So yeah, we visited here multiple times a year. And then the very first day I ever visited this area, I'm like, I want to move here, and finally did it. So I absolutely love helping individuals, whether it's relocating, whether it's a second home, investment property. It's just a very, it's like my passion. You know, I love helping those families out and to be able to find something and enjoy this area here.
Well, and so even though it is a massive tourism destination, kind of give us an idea of what it's like to actually be a local and to live there. You know, what is it like in the off season, and what are things that as locals you guys really enjoy doing in the area?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, so during the season, obviously I love it because, you know, it's a lot of water activities. So we go boating a lot. There's also a huge destination place called Crab Island.
Okay.
And fun fact about that is Crab Island is not an island. And if you guys aren't familiar with that, it's where hundreds of boats basically come to this area. It's a sandbar, a huge sandbar, and the water level is about knee to waist deep. And boats just anchor there and just have a good time like you would on the beach, but you can only get there by boat. So that's just a neat place, you know, to hang out and enjoy the sun. There's a neat area called Harbor Walk Village in Destin. You can see all the fishing boats that are up there. You can see tons of restaurants, great area just, you know, to see the harbor there. And so you can just like basically walk from one end to the other. So, you know, just besides like water activities, the locals are extremely nice. In the off season, you know, like I said, it's a small town. Yeah. You'll really start getting to know the locals. So when you start walking into different restaurants and different stores, you know each other by name.
That's awesome. So it's really that small town feel, especially in the off season.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, I love both seasons. I love it when all the visitors come and all the activities that brings, you know. So, yeah, I just love everything in the community that surrounds it.
What are some of your favorite, I know that we've already mentioned Beauchamp's as a favorite restaurant, but what are just some of your favorite local spots, whether it's restaurants or shops? It can be whatever, but what are some of your local favorites?
Yeah, so definitely Beauchamp's Oyster House, Dewey Destin. You guys will find that. So these are, like, I love seafood.
Yes.
So Dewey Destin, there's two different ones. There's one on the harbor, and then there's one called Old Dewey Destin. Okay. And that's the one that's kind of like picnic tables that kind of float on the water, I guess you could say, or have a dock over the water that actually faces Crab Island. And you just have these large seafood picnic or seafood baskets, you know, that you can get. It's absolutely delicious. And then I would say also Mimo's is actually an Italian restaurant that's fantastic. Their lobster parpadelli, definitely it's phenomenal. And all of these are local restaurants. So,
not the big chains and yeah.
Exactly. And then I would say like common areas to be able to go to, like I said, the Harbor Walk Village is really neat to take your family to, with the restaurants and little shops. There's the Commons, which is kind of like a outdoor shopping mall, I guess you could say. It's got some restaurants in there as well as tons and tons of shopping. And then further down, we have the outlets. So we have some outlets that you can go to. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things to do. There's even a racetrack for kids.
Yeah.
You know, they have like the putt, and they even have a water park. There's just endless amount of activities for families.
And there's also golfing too, right? Like I feel like I've seen a couple of golf courses that I've been down there.
It's a pretty huge area for golfing. People come here to visit for golfing. So yeah, there's some absolutely great golf courses. I'm not a huge golfer myself. I wish I was. I go out there and I'm like, I'm not very good at this.
I can't make a ball go very far.
Yeah.
I've tried. I've gotten lessons. Golf is just, it's not in my wheelhouse. I can top golf, but regular golf, not my thing.
Yeah.
But I can appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like this has been super helpful, super informative. And before we wrap up, I know you already shared one of your fun facts, but I know you have two others. So share your fun facts with us about the Destin area.
Yes, so one of the fun facts is that we're known as the world's luckiest fishing village. And the reason is because we have direct access to the Gulf of Mexico, and we're also known as the nation's largest commercial fishing fleet. And the reason being is that we have a variety of species of fish, and there's about 20 edible ones. You know, like I mentioned, there's like snapper, some common ones are grouper, mahi-mahi, great fish, you know, that you hear in the area. Another fun fact is the white sandy beaches. So everyone is amazed by our sand, and a lot of people refer to it as like powder-like. So the white sand is actually really ground quartz crystal from the Appalachian Mountains. So I thought that's a fun fact. You can definitely read up on that to find a little bit more details.
I mean, that's really neat. I mean, like I told you before, when we've gone to St. Lucia, all the beaches are dark beaches except for the one beach, which is Sugar Beach. And it's because the hotel that's there, it's no longer owned by Hilton, but it was. But Hilton used to fly in white sand, so they had the white sandy beach. And now this hotel has to like continue that because now they're known for it. But I mean, that's really neat to know though, that like that, because truly when you think of the Emerald Coast, it's called the Emerald Coast because the water can really have that emerald color to it, and it's really beautiful.
It really does.
Contrast that with the white sand. You know, I know that it's not as far down in Florida, and so you know, the wintertime can be not as warm as say if you went further south in Florida, but I mean, I feel like it's really unparalleled though, and just how beautiful it is, and that's why a lot of people love to go there and vacation there.
Yes, absolutely. And I even have gone to other islands before, and I get there and I think, why is it I'm here? You know, I live in vacation.
You live in paradise.
Every day. Yes. And the water here and the water and the beaches here are absolutely beautiful. So now I'm thinking in my head, I'm just going to start going to the mountains. Something completely different because I got my beach here.
Well, come on up to Gatlinburg. Let's go together.
Yes.
We'll enjoy the mountains. And
Absolutely.
then I'm going to come down and visit the Destin area because, again, it has truly, even though this isn't somewhere I grew up going to the beach, like this is where our family is going to go. This is now a big part of our life. And it's a lot of people that live in the Middle Tennessee area, like the 30A area is their happy place. And there's a reason, there's a reason why so many people say that.
Yeah.
Well, Candice, thank you so much. I'm going to leave all of your contact information down below if anyone is interested in getting in contact with you about any vacation or rental properties down there. But thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, thank you.
But again, if you're looking for Candice's information or you're interested about real estate, whether it's in Nashville or down in the Destin community, both of our contact information is below. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Again, my name is 𝐋𝐈𝐊𝐄. I'll see you next time.